My mother suffered a stroke, and if it's severe, she may lose the ability to walk or require daily care. The day after receiving this distressing news, I returned home to find my husband Jake and my mother-in-law engaged in conversation in the living room. Tears welled up in my eyes as I shared the situation with them, but Jake's response was unexpectedly cold. "What are you talking about? She's elderly, right? Shouldn't we just leave her care to a facility?" He callously remarked. "You must be joking. She's my only mother," I responded, searching for the right words. However, my plea was met with a dismissive attitude. "You're already a part of this family, right? You shouldn't get involved in your family matters. Even if there's an expense, we can't bear it." "My son is right. I wish that old woman would just pass away soon," added my mother-in-law. Those words shook me to the core. I might have endured such remarks if they were directed at me, but I couldn't forgive the insult towards my mother. In that moment, I silently vowed to myself that someday I would find a way to stand up to these two. That opportunity presented itself a year later. I, Lisa Furr, was a 29-year-old housewife. Prior to living with my mother, I had dedicated myself to a successful career at a major company. My father's sudden demise from illness left only my mother, Susan, to be my constant support. In my heart, she held a special place. Her warm embraces and unwavering strength were a daily reassurance. Despite not leading a lavish life, my mother took on various part-time jobs to provide everything I needed, including tuition for hobbies and classes. Driven by a deep desire to one day offer her a comfortable life, I studied diligently and eventually secured a position at the company of my dreams. When my employment was confirmed, my mother shared in my joy by embracing me. "I'm so glad your dreams have come true," she expressed her genuine happiness. Jake Fuller, who later became my husband, was my first mentor at the new job. He guided me through the intricacies of the role, and our mutual trust deepened. As we started having dinner together more frequently, our emotional connection naturally grew. Following his passionate confession, our relationship evolved into a romantic one, and we began dating. Jake was assertive and experienced, leading our relationship with confidence. At 26, he made a significant proposal. "Lisa, would you start a new chapter with me? I promise to make you happy." "Thank you, Jake. I'm truly overjoyed," I replied, accepting the radiant ring he offered. As I slid it onto my finger, a profound sense of happiness enveloped me, and Jake gazed at me with deep intensity. "Lisa, how do you think we should tell your mom about our marriage?" "Well, I believe no matter how we put it, she'll be overjoyed. After all, she genuinely wants the best for us," I replied, nestled in Jake's embrace as we admired the twinkling city lights, feeling like we were on cloud nine. A few weeks later, the moment arrived to share our engagement news with my mother. As we made our way to her home, a mix of excitement and nervousness filled my heart. When we finally broke the news, her eyes immediately welled up with tears of happiness. "Lisa, it feels like a dream. Congratulations from the depths of my heart." "Thank you, Mom." "Please don't cry," I urged gently. "Jake, promise me you'll take good care of my dear Lisa. Ensure she experiences the happiness that outweighs any hardships she's faced," my mother implored, her words resonating deeply with Jake, who nodded earnestly. "Absolutely, I will treasure our future together," Jake vowed, his sincerity evident. Witnessing the heartfelt exchange between my mother and Jake filled me with immense joy. Later, we arranged to visit Jake's family home. I knew that his parents had divorced when he was young, and now he lived with his mother. Despite feeling nervous about meeting my future mother-in-law for the first time, I was determined to make a positive impression, carefully selecting my attire and hairstyle, and picking out special traditional sweets as a gift. I arrived at their home. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lisa Paston. I'm looking forward to getting to know you," I greeted her tentatively, noticing her scrutinizing gaze. There was a hint of judgment in her eyes. "Ah, Jake, so you've chosen a girl who appears quiet and reserved. That's unexpected," she remarked, catching me off guard with her blunt observation. "Mom, please don't judge solely based on appearances. Lisa is a remarkable person inside and out, Jake defended, his voice firm yet gentle. I was hoping for someone with depth rather than superficial charm, she continued, her tone critical. I understand, but I imagined a more glamorous bride for you. And about the gift, I have a sweet tooth. A cake would have been preferable, she remarked, eyeing the cookies I had brought before placing them on the table. I apologize. I should have been more considerate, I replied with a slight tremor in my voice, feeling the tension ease as Jake guided me to sit beside him. Putting that aside, Mom, we've been considering taking the next step and getting married, Jake disclosed. Upon hearing this significant news, his mother sighed deeply and after a brief pause, responded, I figured it was about time, Jake. All right, I understand. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate your understanding. However, if you're going to live here, I'd like you to quit your job and help around the house. Wait, really? I was taken aback by her sudden demand, turning to Jake with surprise and concern. I've always wanted to maintain my career after marriage. I made sure to communicate this clearly to him in advance. I had envisioned a life just for the two of us. I understand, but if Mom says so, it's a wife's duty, right? Jake's unexpected statement left me shocked. Jake, I clearly communicated my desire to continue working even after we get married, right? Yeah, I remember that conversation, but I've been thinking it might be better if you didn't work after we get married. What's your reasoning? Well, I think it would be a bit complicated to work at the same company with my wife. Plus, I don't want people to think I can't support our household on my own income. As I listened to his words, I felt overwhelmed. But what about living together? Weren't we planning to start a new life together, just the two of us? I don't recall discussing that specifically. I've always lived with my parents, so I just assumed we'd naturally live with them. But my family home is quite far from here, isn't it? There's a 2-hour drive between my parents' home and your parents'. Leaving my mother was a significant concern for me. His words deeply surprised me. However, Jake remained firm in his beliefs and continued to passionately express his views. Lisa, why are you so shocked? In the tradition of marriage, women often leave their family homes to live with their husband's family. So the situation with your family really doesn't matter. From now on, my mother will become your new family. But in my heart, are you reconsidering the marriage itself? Your mother would be heartbroken. She's genuinely happy about our upcoming marriage. I felt that Jake's words contained an undeniable truth. Consequently, with a heavy heart, I decided to choose a life with him in his home. Giving up my career and distancing myself from my cherished family home was a painful decision. However, my mother respected my choice and offered warm words of encouragement. Lisa, marriage comes with its share of challenges, but building strong relationships with Jake and his mother is crucial. Amidst these challenges, never forget to make sincere efforts. Mom, thank you. I'll cherish your words and do my best. After our wedding, we moved to Jake's house to embark on our new life. On the first day, his mother greeted me with stern words. From now on, you'll be the heart of this house and will take on all household chores. I won't tolerate any negligence, so give it your all. Despite her years as a housewife, her expectations surpassed my assumptions. Despite my initial bewilderment, I resolved to tackle my new daily life sincerely. While my mother-in-law seemed more interested in the TV show and snacking than doing chores, I diligently cleaned the messy house, visible dust and dirt. Cleaning wasn't the only task. I also had to prepare dinner and handle the laundry. Soon, Jake returned from work, and as we sat down for dinner, my mother-in-law frowned and commented, "What's this? Doesn't this dish taste a bit bland?" I followed a cookbook and even tasted it myself to ensure the seasoning was right. Yet my mother-in-law candidly showed her discontent, pouring a lot of soy sauce over her dish. Even Jake added more soy sauce to his meal. "I think the taste might be a bit bland, Lisa. You made this, right?" "Yes, I made it." "How about learning more about the traditional flavors of my mom's dishes?" As a full-time housewife, You might want to do that, right? Understood. I'll be careful. Seeing me like this, my mother-in-law seemed somewhat satisfied. Yet, her criticisms continued, pointing out even trivial things related to housework. For about a year, I led a tough life, constantly losing weight due to stress. Despite my mother's genuine happiness about my marriage, I couldn't easily suggest getting a divorce. Amidst such circumstances, my cell phone rang. Hello. What, my mom? The renowned hospital in my hometown informed me that my mother had suddenly fallen ill and was brought in. Her condition was serious, and they wanted me to come to the hospital immediately. At that moment, my mother-in-law was visiting her friend, and Jake was busy at work. I quickly messaged Jake about the situation, left a note for my mother-in-law, and hastily left the house. At the hospital, I learned that my mother had suffered a severe stroke. The doctors performed a successful operation, but there was a possibility she might need rehabilitation. Filled with shock and concern, I continued holding my mother's hand by her side. When her condition stabilized for a moment, I decided to temporarily return home. As I entered the house, my husband Jake and my mother-in-law were waiting, their expressions cold and accusatory. Why is a stay-at-home wife leaving the house this much? Last night, Mom and I had no choice but to eat out. The read received on my message was definitely there. I couldn't believe that Jake, who should have fully grasped the situation, was indifferent to my mother's emergency. Naturally, I had no choice but to go to her regardless. As tears began to form in my eyes, I implored Jake and my mother-in-law. Mom had a severe stroke. There's a chance she might be left with paralysis in her body or speech. She might need daily care. Seeming a bit shocked by the news, Jake responded, "That's concerning. So, how do you plan to deal with your mother's condition going forward?" I haven't decided on the specifics yet, but if needed, I intend to fully care for my mother. I'd appreciate it if you could understand that, I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. I see. But do you really need to spend your time caring for an elderly person? Wouldn't it be better to just put her in an affordable facility? Jake's words cut deep, disbelief coursing through me. What? I can't believe what you're saying. She's my beloved mother. Please don't be so cold-hearted, I desperately retorted. Jake coldly let out a sarcastic snort. Haven't I told you many times since you married into this family? What happens in your original home is no longer your concern. And if you're thinking about a facility, we won't contribute a dime. Don't expect any help from us, Jake retorted, his tone devoid of empathy. Exactly, chimed in my mother-in-law, her words like daggers. If that old woman were gone, things would be a bit easier for us. Rage swelled inside me, my heart heavy with hurt and anger. I could never forgive them for speaking ill of my mother, not just criticizing me, but showing such callousness towards her plight. I vowed never to forgive them for their attitude, no matter what happened. Renewing my determination to eventually retaliate against them, I stood there, unable to put my feelings into words. Silently, I left the room and hurried back to my own, where my love for Jake had already vanished, replaced by anger towards him and my mother-in-law. However, I knew I couldn't act rashly. My mother's health was still unstable, and I needed to carefully plan my next steps. Under the harsh scrutiny of my mother-in-law and husband, I continued visiting my mother at the hospital. Surprisingly, her surgery went smoother than expected, and it turned out her paralysis was very mild. After about half a year of hospitalization and rehabilitation, the doctors declared that my mother could live at home again. Lisa, I'm sorry for causing you so much worry because of me. Did I cause any trouble for Jake or your mother-in-law? Despite her own difficult situation, my mother was genuinely concerned about how I was adapting to life in my in-laws' house. Her compassion touched my heart, filling it with both pain and gratitude. Unable to express my thanks in words, I just smiled and squeezed her hand tightly. Meanwhile, the situation in my in-laws' house was different. My mother, father-in-law, and my husband started blaming me for using my mother's condition as a shield. accusing me of neglecting my duties at home because I was too concerned about my own family. My mother-in-law, with a sharp gaze, said, "What are you thinking, neglecting your duties in our house because you're worried about your mother?" Despite my best efforts to fulfill my domestic responsibilities, I found myself under such accusations. In the midst of this blame game, Jake also raised his voice against me. "Honestly, Mom, I didn't think through this marriage well enough back then. I never thought it would become this difficult." My mother-in-law responded with a tilt of her head, saying, "If we had known, I would have opposed the marriage from the start." Jake, with a somewhat downcast expression, said, "I'm really sorry, Mom. I'll think more carefully and act responsibly from now on." Angrily, my mother-in-law shot back, "It's all her fault. None of this would have happened if she had just properly done her housework." Even as I heard their words, I pretended to feel nothing and continued with my chores. Day by day, I gradually spoke less at home, acting like a machine just going through the motions of housework. Nevertheless, they continued to criticize me even more harshly. Meanwhile, I secretly recorded their harsh words. Using my free time, I also continued to study and acquire qualifications for the future. I was preparing for a future where, even if I ended up separating from Jake, I would be able to live on my own. Despite my daily chores, I did not neglect my efforts towards further growth and qualification acquisition, even if it meant cutting down on my sleep. About a year after my mother's health deteriorated, while I was folding laundry at home, my cell phone rang. "Hello, is this Mrs. Jake Foster's wife? This is from his workplace." The content of the call was an unexpected event. Jake had been in a traffic accident while commuting during work, and he was immediately taken to a nearby hospital. I calmly accepted the news and specifically conveyed the information to my mother-in-law, who reacted with a panicked expression. "We need to hurry. I will go ahead to the hospital. You should organize the necessary things for the transfer and hospital stay and then follow later." Mother-in-law hastily left the house. I quietly watched her leave and then decided to first complete the administrative procedures I had planned to do at the city office. After returning home from the city office, I spent a long time alone in my room, savoring the silence I hadn't felt in a long time. The morning came, and as the light of a new day streamed through the windows, I slowly woke up. I readied myself and made my way to the hospital where Jake had been admitted. As I slowly opened the door to his hospital room, my mother-in-law, who was waiting, showered me with words of indignation. "What were you doing? You finally came at this time, and while Jake is in such a condition," she exclaimed. Taking a deep breath, I approached Jake's bed. He weakly opened his eyes and seemed to recognize me. Jake had suffered major damage to his spine from the traffic accident. Right now, he was unable to move his lower body. The hospital room was quiet, and only the sunlight streaming in from the window brought a sense of warmth. My mother-in-law stood next to Jake's bed, her eyes filled with tears as she worriedly looked at him. Jake began to speak to me in a weak voice. "I understand that my current situation is tough, but I want to get back to our everyday life at home, Lisa. I think I'm going to need your support for the life ahead." I couldn't meet Jake's pleading gaze and instead formed a light smile as I took out a piece of paper from my bag. It was a divorce paper I had received from the city office yesterday afternoon. My part was already properly signed and stamped. "Jake, I want you to sign this divorce paper," I said calmly. "What? What are you talking about, Lisa?" The color drained from my husband's and mother-in-law's faces at these astonishing words. I took a deep breath and continued speaking calmly. "I haven't forgotten the time you told my frail mother to go to a facility. Why should I take care of you when you can say something like that? Maybe you should consider a facility too. It would be less of a financial burden." "Lisa, are you really saying this?" There was surprise and confusion in my mother-in-law's voice, and at that moment, I could feel how much she was hurting. Maintaining my calm demeanor, I slowly slid the papers toward Jake. "You can fill out these papers once you're feeling better. I will be leaving this house today, so from now on, you and your mom will need to support each other, just the two of you. Is this a joke, Lisa? Are you serious? Are you really going to abandon me in this state? Despite his frustrated voice, I maintained my resolve and replied, "Who was it that ignored and neglected my precious mother a year ago? I can't believe you've forgotten. I wonder who would help people like you. Actions always come back to you. I really hope you too receive what you deserve. Just accept your punishment and go straight to hell, you worthless beings." Leaving Jake and my mother-in-law stunned in disbelief behind, I quickly left the place. Hours later, before my mother-in-law returned home, I packed up all my belongings and returned to my childhood home. I had informed my mother about what happened beforehand, so she welcomed me with a warm and gentle expression. As a result, Jake and I had no room for reconciliation, and after a messy divorce process, our divorce was officially finalized. Having firmly recorded Jake's and his mother's inappropriate remarks played a big part, and I was able to receive a satisfactory division of assets. Afterward, it seems Jake returned to his home. I've heard rumors that his mother has taken over his care. Although he got some insurance money, working like before is difficult for him, and it seems he ultimately had to retire. He's now shut himself in at home, and it appears his mother is supporting him through his reckless days. She, influenced by the long-giving life, has also aged considerably. When I heard all this information, I didn't feel a bit of sympathy. I truly wish them what they deserve. As for me, I've started living together with my mother again and have re-entered the workforce after studying for certifications. I was able to successfully change jobs to a workplace with almost the same conditions as my previous company. Fortunately, my mother's health has been steadily recovering, and recently, I can see her passionately engaging in her favorite hobbies. Seeing that, I feel truly relieved. Moving forward as we live together, I strongly feel that we should support each other while I give my all at work, building a bright future together.